Today I've got not one, but two AceBeam Rider RX flashlights for review. They're identical on the internals and the emitter is the same on both of them. It's just the finish and color. Let's jump right in and say that these lights are very small EDC lights with an interesting extra feature, which is that it's also a fidget toy. That's a first for me. I've never had a light that's a fidget toy. And honestly, I don't own fidget toys and I don't feel the impulse to do it. So if this thing wins me over, that will mean something because I just don't seek out fidget toys. Let's start by talking about the size. This is a small light. If you compare it to a D4V2, you can see that it's quite a bit more slender. Let's line it up like this. You can see that it's even a little bit not as tall. This is a 14500 cell light, so that's roughly equivalent to a AA sized lithium ion, whereas this is an 18650. And I noticed that this light comes in at a little bit smaller, a little more slender than the other 14500 lights I have, like a Ray Light LAN. This is also a 14500, and if you take a look at it, they are very similar sized. The AceBeam is actually just a tad bit tinier on all dimensions. It comes in two colors. This is called Sophisto Grey, and this one here is called Silver. I didn't have a great idea of what these were going to look like when I first purchased them. That's why I got both. And I noticed that the Sophisto Grey has a very metallic sheen to it and very smooth. It's a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, but I also noticed that the more that I don't wipe it down and the more I just let the fingerprints accumulate, the better it looks. I give it a cursory wipe before this video review, so if you see fingerprints appearing, that's because I've broken my own rule of just letting them accumulate. It's a stainless steel shell, and this one, as I said, is very smooth to touch. It feels like glass. The silver is more of a brushed look, and it resists fingerprints, but honestly, in person, I'm not as much of a fan of this style than this one. I think that in pictures, and maybe in this video review even, the silver might be a little more fetching to the eye, but I think that in my hand, the Sophisto Grey is a better look. I also noticed that the branding stands out a lot more on the Sophisto Grey. So the Rider RX right here, the AceBeam, and then these logos all stand out. Whereas on the brushed silver here, it's even hard to read AceBeam and Rider RX. So if you like things that are unbranded, maybe this is the one to get right here. Let's talk about the ergonomics really quickly. It's small, as I said. It fits in the hand very nicely. See that? It's tiny. And it has a protruding button, but if you slide it over and click it up, then it is almost a guarded button and you can tail stand it very easily. It's completely circular, and the clip here is a two-way clip, so it'll clip on forward or reversed. I haven't tried it on my ball cap. I find that this is a little bit heavy for what I'd put on a ball cap, so I didn't even try it. But I guess, if I had to change a tire and I was going to try it out, maybe it would work. There's not much more to say about the ergonomics, except for that it's a slender light and very kind of smooth in the hand, and that it's made of stainless steel. So let's jump into the special feature of this light, which is the fidget function. It slides in kind of an L shape, which is actually denoted by this little decal right here. And you can hold the light like this, flick it left and right. And once it gets left, you can flick it up. And when you flick it up, it kind of pops up like that. So you kind of do one of these. I hope it's coming across on the video, but it has a very satisfying click. So I would imagine for people that like to sit there with flipper knives and kind of flip them while they're watching TV, this would be kind of a really fun thing, I'd imagine. Just sitting there and kind of flipping it around like this without kind of the, danger of kind of hurting yourself on a knife. So it seems like kind of a nice alternative to flipping around something like that. I don't really use fidget toys much, but I've been carrying this in my pocket exclusively for the better part of a week. And I gotta say that there's been moments where I've just been kind of bored, like I was waiting for somebody to process something at a store and I'm just standing there. And I immediately thought to grab this and kind of just click on it. And it was kind of fun. So I don't think that I'm the person that gravitates towards clicky devices like this, but you know, it served its purpose this week and I did grab it a few times and just kind of played with it. There is no rule on how you play with the clicky function, but I noticed that there's a little channel. Let's see if I can get on view here. There's a little channel in the side of this that allows it to move back and forth. And there's a ball bearing right here that when I flick it back and forth, you can see that ball bearing is sliding to either side. And then when you move it forward, the ball bearing travels up to that forward position like that. But I also noticed that flicking it left and right was fairly easy. And then to get to flick forward, you kind of had to go over this trough. And it's a little more difficult. Not difficult, as you can see, I can do it one-handed, right? I can do it like this. But I just wanted to point out that it's not the easiest thing to flick in the world. It's kind of a thing that you have to push on pretty hard, but then it has a satisfying click and you kind of feel the ka-thunk in your hand. My 7-year-old son tried to do it and he was less successful. He kind of had to hold it two-handed and then push it like this, you know, kind of hold on to it. And I don't know how satisfying that was for him. My wife, she had smaller hands and she could flick it back and forth, but she had trouble getting it into this top position like that. I've played with this Sophisto Grey one extensively, but I haven't actually flipped the silver one much. I just pulled it out of the wrapper for you guys. Let's see here. Oh, this one actually clicks a little differently. This one's actually a little easier to click. Well, that's interesting. I don't know if this is a result of, oh, I bet I do know. This is probably a result of the brushed stainless steel. It provides just enough grip that it's easier for me to click it forward and up and all that. So that's interesting. I was actually noticing that I'm fumbling with the Sophisto Grey more than I did off camera when I was just playing with it myself. And I think mainly that's because as I'm sitting here trying to video it, the pressure's on, right? And my hands aren't sweaty, but they're just a little bit more moister than normal. It's kind of giving me just a little bit of a harder time to kind of slide this thing around and push it up because this is a very slick clip here. The sides of the body are slick. So it's one of those things where I think that the fidget toy is fun and it's not the kind of thing I would normally carry. And I feel it works, but it wasn't immediately amazing. Right? I had to kind of go, well, this is tough, you know, it was a little hard at first. Over here on this silver one, let's see here. Yeah, it's a little easier. It's just easier. Now the clip feels exactly the same. It's that same kind of stainless steel smooth clip as over here, but the body just has a little bit more grip to it and it's just easier. But I don't know why it's easier to get, well, it gotta be the grip thing. I don't know. Maybe there's even manufacturing differences. Hard to say. Let's talk about the UI. It's a forward clicky, which means that the button will half press and come on, and then you can press further to kind of latch it and keep it in place. So in operation, there's 4 modes, and this is what it would look like. You would half press, half press, half press, half press, get to where you want to be, and click it and latch it in. So it will go low, medium 1, medium 2, and high. It also has mode memory, so it'll remember where you're at. If you advance the modes around 2 cycles, so you go low, medium, high, high, and then low, medium 1, medium 2, high, and then again, you get SOS. That's about it for the interface. There's no other hidden functions, and the way the mode memory works is based on timing. So whatever mode you're on, if you use it, click it off and then wait at least I think 5 or 6 seconds, next time you click it on, you'll still be on that mode, right? Now, if you click it off quickly and then click again, you go to the next mode because it assumes that you're, advancing through the modes. This light having a forward clicky is kind of interesting because I don't know AceBeam for having those types of interfaces usually, and the interface feels at home to me. The only thing I wish it had was maybe a menu system where if you click 10 times or something like that, you could then tap out a series of taps to be able to do things like disable mode memory entirely or maybe change the mode groups. Nothing like that exists on this light. Now let's talk about charging. So the way you charge it is by opening the light up, taking the top off, okay, spilling the battery out, and then plugging it into the USB-C port right there. There's a little light that lights up, and it charges relatively fast. You can also put this in a standalone charger, and that's what I usually do. The light takes this raised protected cell, but I also noticed it takes non-proprietary cells, so you're not locked into using this. For example, you can use this vape cell H10 as long as it has the raised pole here. What I noticed was that a flat top unprotected cell H10 did not work. The little driver head here just doesn't touch the right things and it just doesn't come on. So this one is out, can't use that one. This one worked fine. And I also want to point out that if you use an unprotected cell like this, be careful not to drain the cell too much because this doesn't have any low voltage protection. I hooked it up to a bench power supply. I used all sorts of voltages and it came on every time. But that's not entirely bad. I mean, it sounds dodgy, you know, for using an unprotected cell. But the good news is the reason why it's set up that way is because it will take alkaline and nickel metal hydride batteries. So you can throw one of these in here and it works just fine. So when we get to the lumen tube here in a second, let me get this not cross-threaded. I did notice, by the way, that this little copper pill, and I love that it's copper because this thing is tiny, but I noticed that on both of the models, it's not, let's say, difficult to thread, but because you're pushing against a battery and there's a spring at the bottom, it's one of those things where if you're not careful, you could potentially cross-thread it. So I always kind of gingerly rotate it a couple times until I get it lined up. So here we go with the alkaline. You can see it works just fine. So that's good news, but it also explains why the driver is not terminating at 2.8 volts or something like that. Okay, let's take a look at some lumen values of comparable lights. If you got a Ray Pineapple Mini here, you'll know that on turbo, and turbo is always tricky to get to. There, well, nope. Hang on, we'll try again, and oh man, there we go. Turbo is 200 lumens about, and this is running, this is a more slender light here, but that's because it's running on a 10440. So this is not a 14500. This is a much smaller runtime. This lithium ion only has 300 milliamp hour in it, so much smaller than the almost 1,000 milliamp hour that these guys have. Let's take a look at the Raylight LAN, and I would say that the Raylight LAN and the Raylight Pineapple, the big one, not the mini, are more analogous to what AceBeam's doing. And let's go into high, and there you go, 500 lumens, and then it starts dropping. I'm not going to do a full runtime test here or anything, but just, about 500 lumens with a fully charged battery when it first comes on. Okay, now let's take a look at the AceBeam with a fully charged battery. And this is a NiMH 219F, so that's a new emitter. It purports to be a little bit brighter, and we'll take a look at the tint in a moment here. And, this one is an NiMH 219B, and so is this one. Let's take a look. Oh, these are both 4500K. So SW45K is what I'm trying to say, 4500 Kelvin. And this one, this 219F, only comes in 5000K at the moment. So let's get this one on high. I think that's it. There we go. And we got about 600. Let me kind of make sure one more time. Yeah, a little less than 600. I noticed that when I fully charged the battery, and I did see it was fully charged, but you know what? I've been using it during this video and I haven't recharged it. I noticed that when I first turn it on with a fully charged battery, I get 600. But you can see that after just a little bit of use, it drops. Yeah, I think it's pretty solid to say that with a fully charged battery, 30 seconds in, so ANSI, you'd probably get about 550 lumens. Now, one of my big issues with the light initially was that there's 4 modes, right? So let's go to low here and notice that low is, well, it's saying 3 lumens, but you know what? It's a little higher than that. I think part of what's going on is that I have the wrong aperture on this thing right now. But it says, you know, and also my tube doesn't do super accurately low, but it says about 3 lumens or so, or 2 lumens. That's higher than I want it to be. So I was disappointed with that. I wanted a moonlight. And medium 1 here is about 50 lumens, medium 2 is about 250, and then you go up to the 600, right? Well, it turns out that by throwing an alkaline battery in there, and that's what I got in the silver here, it solves the problem. Let's see here, and there you go, there's the moonlight. As you can see, the moonlight's not even registering on my Lumen tube. So it's a big difference between the lithium ion and the, here we go, the lithium ion and the alkaline. Actually, my camera isn't really picking it up the way I want. Let me see if I can adjust the exposure here. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's still, there we go. That's what I want. Let's get these right the same distance. There we go. So here, let me get these on camera so you can see they're the same distance. See how much dimmer this is on the right than this one on the left? So if you want to use this for moonlight and walking around at night not waking people, I would definitely throw an alkaline in here. Now the downside to that is once you do, the high isn't 600 anymore. It's, let's see here, it is now about 200, about 170. So you go either output with the lithium ion that's included, or you go get a really nice moonlight with a nickel metal hydride or an alkaline. And yes, I didn't mention that, but nickel metal hydrides work great in here. All right, let's take a look at some tint by white wall hunting here, we call it, right? This is a Pineapple Mini. Let me put it on turbo. And the Pineapple Mini is running at 200 lumens, and I've got the, on the camera here, I've got the white balance and the aperture locked, so it may not look super bright, but that's just because I've got it locked for the other lights that are going to come up. So this is a 219B SW45K at 200 lumens, and it is a little bit rosy, okay? Now let's take a look at Array Light LAN. So this is Array Light LAN next to it. And you can see it is definitely brighter, and you can see that it's rosy as well. And if you're not sure about that, here, let me leave the LAN on here, and for comparison's sake, take the ThruNite T1S that I didn't put in the Lumen tube. It was on screen a little while ago. I didn't put it on the Lumen tube, but this guy's 1200 lumens, so it's quite bright, but it's also quite green that you can see here. So here we have the Pineapple LAN on the left, the ThruNite T1S on the right. Okay, got kind of greenish tint. And now let's just put those like that. And then I will add the AceBeam Rider RX to the right here. And you can see that the Rider RX is not green, but it's not rosy. So if you're looking for tint, I would say that the tint on the Rider RX is okay. It's passable, but it's not going to blow you away. It's not objectionable like the T1S in the middle here, but it's definitely not as rosy as you can see with the LAN on the left here, and then you can see that this is a little bit more neutral here. All right, here we are inside my garage for beam shots. And normally I do these out front of my house on my street, but I mean, these lights aren't really throwers, and these are lights that you'd use for EDC work close up. So let's take a look at the LAN on the left and the Rider RX on the right. And the LAN is known to have a really nice reflector and a really nice beam, and I think that's definitely true. And here comes the rider, and you see that the rider has even a slightly larger hotspot. And I find the beam super nice. I don't see any artifacts. It's got, let me turn the LAN off for a second. You can see the spill is really wide. There's a nice middle hotspot, which is really smooth. And when I rotate it here, you see that there's no artifacts at all. So the focusing of the lens here is perfect. Let's see if I can get that on camera for you. There we go. So there's a little reflector in there, and it's doing a great job. Let's go back to this. So let's do a little bit lower here. There we go. There we go. So you can see it's just a great, great, great beam. All right, so my conclusion with this light is that at the price that these things are selling for right now, which is around $55, they seem in line with the other types of nice lights that are on the market. The LAN is, around 65 or so, depending on the type of metal. And I find that if you really, really want a nice tint, you might still want to seek out the 219Bs of the world, but this 219F wasn't objectionable at all, and it definitely had more lumens. So if you want a small 14500 EDC light that puts out a ton of lumens, then the 219F isn't a bad option. The fidget aspect for it is one of those things where some people are probably going to really love, and some people are going to say this is kind of dumb. The community might find this kind of divisive. I mean, I don't know. We'll find out when it gets into people's hands. I didn't mind it, and I kind of liked having it occasionally, but I could see how someone might say, I don't like fidget toys, I'd never use it, and I don't want this clip even moving around at all. Now, I didn't find that putting it in my pocket was any harder for it moving around, but I could just see somebody having that reaction, like, I just want it fixed, I don't want it moving. So in summary, if you want a nice stainless steel 14500 light, I think you are going to do well with it. I like my LAN, I've liked my pineapples, and this one competes right there with those. So all in all, I like the interface. I like the forward clicky. I wish it had the programmability that the Ray lights have, but I mean, that kind of, it's kind of give or take on these then. It's like this doesn't have a fidget toy on it, and it is a little dimmer, and it's a little more expensive. Also, it's reverse clicky, so some people don't like reverse clicky. These, a little brighter, no UI configurability, but it's got the fidget toy. I also want to point out, for just final thought here, that the LAN is a beautiful design and it feels great in your hand. I want to point that out before I say the next thing, which is I really love the way this one fits in my hand. Something about the fact that it's almost just a straight cylinder and the fact that it's so glossy. I want to also point out that I like the Sophisto Grey more than the silver. It's not that the silver might even look better, but it's just in a tactile standpoint, this has that brushed feel, and this feels like just smooth glass. Really love this one. Thanks for watching this video, and if you like the content, feel free to go ahead and subscribe so you can see when my other videos come out. And I hope to see you in the next review.